Welcome to the Bank Marketing Show, the podcast that engages and informs you for success in today's marketplace. It's the show that will make you a better marketer with trends, tactics, and inspiration from experts and industry leaders. If you're wanting to impact your personal success and position your bank as the best choice in your market, you're in the right place. Now let's dive into today's show with your hosts, Chris and Dan.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Bank Marketing Show. Glad to have you guys as listeners with us. We always like to throw in a reminder. If you have not subscribed to the show, please do so. Dan, we've been on a really cool roll hearing from more and more folks in the industry, in the banking industry and the marketing industry from all over the place that have been joining and subscribing to the show. So that's been some cool stuff for us. And I know that our guests today are going to just add to the value of what we've got going on with the show. So really excited about it.
Yeah. So today we've got Jerry Shu and Jerry Shulman of Daylit. Welcome, guys.
Thanks, Dan. Thanks, Chris.
Yeah, great to have you guys.
Daylit, formerly you guys just changed your name from Lendica. You guys, I think you're both based in Boston. You met through, well, we'll get into your story in a minute, but, you both have backgrounds in, Jerry come from kind of the quantitative finance world. Jared, I know you come from the hedge fund world, and, you've gotten into this, now the Daylit focuses on, AR. You have an AI agent for accounts receivable for small and medium-sized businesses. So today we're really going to focus on, the AI agent marketplace. I know everybody's kind of in a different, all the clients I work with are kind of in a different part of their journey of using AI, recommending AI to their customers. So we want to kind of get into today, give everybody a better understanding of what AI agents can do in general, and kind of get into the specifics, the expertise of you guys and of Daylit, and really give people a picture of the power of these things and how it can help not just your community bank, but your customers, and help you be a better kind of financial resource for your customers. Because that's what all the community banks really want to do. Yeah. Why don't we start here and tell us a little bit about Daylit. Let's start with kind of how you guys met. It's a really cool story, and then tell us a little bit about what Daylit does.
Absolutely, yeah. So thank you so much for having us. Excited to be here. Excited to chat. Jerry and I have been friends for a fairly long time, and by the way, we're in the same room. So if you see me looking at him or vice versa, that's we're sitting across from each other. We met now, I guess, 10, 12 years ago. And for those that can see the screen, we have very similar names. We actually met at an MIT networking event where someone handed us each other's name tag. So they thought I was Jerry Shu, he was Jared Shulman. We now celebrate the Jewish holidays and the Chinese New Year together. And sort of, as an ode to that. But that's how we met now 12 years ago and started the business about 4 or 5 years ago.
That's great. That's, classic.
I think still happens today. Like when we go on kind of events, give talks, like people still give us the wrong name tag. So it's just a good reminder how, the same name can lead to so many kind of wonderful stuff in life.
Yeah. It's a meet cute. We'll sell the story to the Hallmark Channel later on.
There you go. Fight over email handles and
correct. Yes. So that was at that point, 12 years ago we met and we started the business. We started under the name Lendica with the goal of helping businesses do two things better than they currently had been. One was getting access to better financial products. Our first customer, we actually met at a bar, and we can talk a little bit more about that story and how we got started. And so better financial products. And then the second piece, and where our primary focus right now, is access to better financial intelligence. And so, this customer that we met at a bar, they were struggling to finance their operation. They needed about $50,000 to, kind of save the business. And, over the course of a drink or two, we started to realize that actually they didn't need all $50,000. It was just a small, $5,000 or $10,000 loan. If they just understood the basics of their supply chain, the basics of their network and capital cycle. And it was really that aha moment that Jerry and I had that, this is right around the time that I think it was ChatGPT-3 was coming out. There are these large language models, these reasoning models that can perform some of the basic thought. And at the time, it was probably at a kindergarten level, and now maybe it's closer to a high school or even some say a PhD level. But these large language models, these AI models, can replicate, when given the right context, right information, some of the logic, and certainly help outsource some of the administrative and operational tasks that humans do today. And we thought, well, there's got to be a way for us to inject these agents into some of the basic workflows for businesses, specifically in the working capital cycle or in their accounts receivable and payable. And that's really the foundation of the business today. And we're happy to share a little bit more about what we build, but certainly want to give perspective on what's happening in AI in the suite of the CFO. So happy to talk more.
Yeah. So the way we kind of think about it really is like, how powerful can it be if any, small, mid-sized business has a CFO like a Walmart, and not only have the intelligence of a, super established CFO, but also have all these access to all the financial tool the Walmart has, right? Like that can completely shift the way small and mid-sized business operate, and that's how we want to deliver the solution to the market.
Yeah, so you're saying Walmart's built in super intense custom tools to manage cash flow, make sure money. I mean, I'm simplifying the Walmart case here, but make sure money's in the right place to hit payroll, to pay suppliers, you guys focus kind of on the accounts receivable side, so close that gap between receivable and payable, and they build their own systems to do it, but SMBs don't have that, right? Or they're really not going to build it themselves. But I guess talk a little more about like the problem,
right,
with that problem with the smaller businesses, and maybe how an AI agent starts to solve that, how it thinks through, how it reasons a little bit.
Sure. So you actually brought up an interesting discussion topic, and we can probably ping pong back a little bit on how Walmart and some of these big enterprises have established these systems and run on what you could call operational excellence. And there's certainly tooling there. They've built out these custom systems, but a big part of their competitive edge, of course, balance sheet, is actually just through headcount. They have the budget to hire hundreds or thousands, or in Walmart's case, hundreds of thousands of employees to just make the operation run. Small and medium-sized businesses don't have that luxury. They may operate on thinner margins because they have less negotiating power, and they're just not at the same scale as Walmart. And so they have to do all of the same operational tasks, but just in a much, much, much more efficient way. And this is, I think, like the really cool and huge opportunity with AI is that, we call it the hierarchy. We focus on the suite of the CFO. So the hierarchy of finance, when you think about a pyramid, the very top part of that pyramid are things like strategy and execution and, planning. And in the middle of the pyramid are operations tasks. So these are actually, doing the work and, executing on the strategy. And at the lowest level is administrative tasks, which are basically just follow up and data entry. And these large language models, these AI tools, are built actually to streamline, or in some cases even replace, these lower level, bottom of the pyramid tasks. And so where Walmart, to complete the analogy, where Walmart has, again, hundreds or thousands of people operating on these lower level tasks, the small and medium-sized businesses can be much faster, much more agile to adapt these AI tools. So they're only focusing on the top of the pyramid. And I think that's what the really exciting part of these tools that are going to come out, these AI applications, is to really limit the amount of time and effort spent on bottom of the pyramid stuff. Jerry, maybe you have some perspective.
You can almost think as, hey, not only all these administrative stuff that can be automated, but also a lot of time you are presented with information where you need to make judgments. And judgments traditionally, if you think about in the traditional kind of financial organization, it really varies by people. And it's really hard to control the quality of judgment. Given the same, promise by a client, hey, I'm going to pay you next week. A very good AR person can say, hey, I'm calling out this client is not being really honest. This is just a strategy today, versus another, average junior AR person might say, oh, I gotta take that. They're gonna pay me next week, right? Which then you run into cash flow issue if it's a big accounts receivable invoice. So one thing we kind of via the AR tooling is now we can actually deliver a consistent quality, high quality judgment too in these different scenarios. So I think the beauty of this AI kind of revolution is not only automating a lot of administrative tasks, but also give this like expert level judgment and inject it to these small, mid-sized businesses.
Guys, I had a conversation just this morning with one of our community bank clients, about 700-800 million in asset, dozen branches or so, and spread out about almost half of a state. And, they're trying to grow their small business portfolio. And, we had the discussions around differentiation and value add and those types of things. And I know leading into this conversation, Dan, this was kind of the initial thoughts, and hearing what it is you guys are doing is this is such a potential value add, not just we offer treasury management and checking accounts. Well, no kidding, you're a bank, right? So, this I think what you guys are talking about here speaks into the kind of thing that a bank can say, we've got these, maybe offerings is not the right word, but resources and information. Yeah, you guys can speak to it far better than I can. So is that the perspective and framing, of where for banks a lot of this is coming from and have to offer as a differentiator?
I think it's a really good way of thinking about it. When we think about how AI is going to change business models, we think about it from two different perspectives. And if I had, a whiteboard behind me, I'd draw one line going down and one line going up. So you can imagine 42 lines, 45 degree angles, one pointing down, one pointing up. Let's start with the down. So the down is where you can think about businesses that will be using AI to drive down lower prices, competing on cost. And this is, I'm going to go into my current service and I'm going to use the term AIify or automate and streamline all these tasks that used to involve humans. And I'm going to replace them with these agents. We can define an AI agent later, but I'm going to replace them with these agents. And what that's going to do is it's going to lower my cost basis. And in doing so, it's going to drive down the cost. And I'm going to be able to compete on cost relative to my competitors who have, more human-led workflows. And so that's one perspective, which I think is interesting, but we're opting and we're focused on the other perspective, which I think, Chris, is to more of your point, which is this, 45-degree angle, up and to the right, which is service. And we believe that AI can fundamentally change the way that people think about a service that historically was maybe, one-pronged or focused on one, workflow, can now hit several different spheres, can change the way that you think about whether it's, a checking account that now becomes a, outsourced CIO, or, a deposit account that is now cash applying, your different invoices that are being collected. And that's really, I think, the opportunity for these banks is to think about how can AI completely revolutionize their service. That's the perspective that we're coming with. And Jerry, maybe have some more thoughts.
Yeah, the way you can think about it is like the financial products are, to an extent, not changing, right? It's a very standardized product. So how can a product really shine in today's world? We believe is adding kind of differentiate layer of services. Kind of in the payment space, you always have Visa and MasterCard as the core, but you have let's say Stripe as a payment processor, they add this uniqueness of API layer. Or you look at Shopify, right? It's the same payment processing, but they add this unique layer of e-commerce wholesale platform. So for kind of community banks to think about these kind of almost standardized financial products like checking account or etc., the question is, can we use AI to actually add other value-adding services on top, so it's really benefiting for the customer? One thing we are considering later on in our kind of future offering is, one problem is, hey, the clients have so many vendors, or they have so many customers. When the customer pay me, I don't know where's this money coming from. It's a wire transfer, 100K. I have no idea from which customer this 100K is coming from. But imagine a world we can actually creating checking account unique number for each of my customer. Then it's super easy. Then I can immediately identify where is the money coming from, right? So it's the exact same checking account product, but it can be used in a way that really solve me as a small business my problem, right? So I think there are so many ways, kind of via AI and technology. It's the same financial product, but we can add kind of uniqueness and a twist so that it can really address kind of the day-to-day kind of burning issues of small and mid-sized businesses.
That's exactly right. And just to close out the point, you can imagine competing on cost. These are lower margin, but competing on service and using AI. Jerry gave a great example there. You're now looking at a much higher. I mean, who would ever think that a checking account could be a high margin product? And by thinking outside the box with these new AI tools, I think that's a future that we can look forward to.
And not having to do it manually.
Exactly.
Right? That's what you guys are
Correct.
getting at, is a way to for banks to encourage or offer to their small business customers to be able to utilize these things, piggybacking on and utilizing AI to do it efficiently. So and both of those lines, that you described there, Jared.
Yeah,
correct.
The account, the simple checking account, for a business has all your information in it. I mean, it's got all of your transactions, got the cash flows in and out, and you can get so much information out of that. And so just to think of that scenario, super simple version of that scenario, you're just putting an AI CFO on top of it and saying, hey, this person usually pays you on, net 15 and it's been 30 days, call them. There's a lot of little things like that you can get. And that's a feature for the business, for the small business customer. But, as a bank, it's, if your competitors don't have that, it's a big differentiator, a big reason to come to you.
You're competing on service. And so we just think that, again, and maybe just thinking, abstracting a bit, the world, and we focus mostly on the suite of the CFO, the world is really shifting, and AI will be the catalyst for this shift, where every department that was historically a cost center can now be thought of as a value creator. And there's some precedent to that. I mean, you and I'm sure the audience is, fondly familiar, remembers that, GM Financial in the 80s, where this was, GM was selling cars, but GM Financial was actually the largest value creation in the organization, and they were using these financial products. We imagine a world where even these small and medium-sized businesses that are maybe trading commodities or looking for acquisition or strategic investment, the finance department is not spending its time on these kind of lower level operations tasks, but rather spending their time on strategy, execution, creating value. And so I think that's really the world that we want to build towards, is trying to find a way to enable the suite of the CFO to think more as value creators than a cost center, which is how they, I think, self-admittedly would, qualify themselves today.
Yeah. Well, let's, we've been talking about it a bit already, but you kind of hinted at a minute ago, but can you guys define AI agent, right? I think there's still a lot of people listening might still be kind of, you could drop a bunch of transactional data into ChatGPT directly and have it answer some questions and respond. But how is an AI agent different? And then maybe talk a little about, go from there and talk about how, your AI agent for accounts receivable. Let's get into that a little bit.
Yeah, I think AI agent, as it suggests, kind of two words. One is AI, or three words. One is AI, and then one is agent. The AI piece is basically intelligence layer, right? You can think of it as your brain. And the agent piece really is, which I think make it very unique, is basically be able to take actions on your behalf with the intelligence behind it. So with that lens, the way we identify the problem in the accounts receivable section is there is tons of information you need to process, right? From email, from text, from call, from send out invoices, from the promises from clients, everything in that section. There's tons of information. Secondly, there is a lot of judgment you need to make. Hey, is this client, always pay me on time, but it stopped. There's like 3 invoices now due in 3 days. Should I pay some extra attention? Right. So there's a lot of judgments that's going on. And then now, besides this judgment, the third layer is now great. I spot the issue or potential issue. Now it's time to take action. What kind of action should I take? So we really try to help our clients kind of addressing these 3 layers as they comes through kind of the whole AR workflow. From the information side, the biggest challenge is information are in silo system. A usual business today have at least 3 to 5 different software services they're using. There's accounting software, there's bank software, there is communication, Slacks, there's email tool, right? That's all set. But the information are all in silos. So that's where we start first. Hey, can we create an aggregated way? So we use MCP, which we can explain later, a way that we can actually connect all these data sources so that we can present to AI agents to make judgment. Now, great, we have the information. Second step, we have the information, now what? This is where I think the AI high quality, high level intelligence really come into play is by looking at this ocean of information, what kind of insight can we extract? We call it signals. What matters is not about, hey, the client's not paying me. It's okay because this client is always 45 days late. They will pay you, right? But the issue is to identify the changes that really need a CEO and a CFO to address. So that's where this intelligence piece is really coming in. Making the right judgment, identify signal, identify changes, and then really call out for action. Now, the third layer on the action. You can imagine, there's a wide spectrum of action you can take when someone is paying you late. There is giving them a phone call. There is sending them an email. There is sending them text. Escalate to the CEO. What about sell this invoice to a financial institution? Hey, what about write down or send it to collection agency? But there's a spectrum of action you need to take. Some of the actions beforehand are not taken is because me as the AR person in the company, I have no idea how to work with a collection lawyer. There's action that's not taken because, hey, preparing this material takes time. I'm just don't want to do it. So what's the beauty of these AI agents is we can actually get all this prep work as well as this kind of initial interaction already prepared. Imagine so I think it's very important to call out, this is not kind of the historical Downing emails that kind of people in their head when every time they think about, invoice tool, reminders, bunch of emails, bunch of text messages. It's actually not that. It's actually the ability to judge all the information that's presented and then recommend the right action, the spectrum of tool in your box to make the right action that can speed up the revenue to cash process. So that's, I think, if you think about the traditional kind of text message reminder or email reminder as Web 1.0, I think we are right now at this like Web 3.0 where you can do all these from stablecoin payments to all the ways to kind of intelligence layer. I think that's where we're getting at. I think that's we trying to encapsulate the whole solution to one, and then really deliver a nicer experience to our customer. So sometimes Jared and I joke, our goal really is so that the CFO and the CEO can really spend more time with their family, to have dinner with their family. They don't need to worry about things they don't need to worry about.
Yeah, that you can bubble up the things they do need to worry about in a distinct way, so they're not. You don't have to kind of reduces the mental burden a bit on
Exactly.
Yeah. Here's the things you really need to worry about, but hey, you need to call this customer. I'm simplifying it, but you need to call this customer, but here's what you say. here's the history on it. You don't have to then go do the research to figure it out and then call the customer. It kind of streamlines that.
And that's really when we talk about, tough without the whiteboard, but you can imagine the pyramid, this hierarchy of the suite of the CFO or finance. There's so many of these actions, and we're focused on accounts receivable, but just in general, there's so many of these actions, so many of these workflows that fall towards the bottom of the suite of the CFO. And that's really the promise of these AI agents, is to address some of these workflows. And Jerry gave a great definition of an AI agent. I think just like another way to think about it is ChatGPT, but with tools. And so, we as humans can go and we can ask ChatGPT all of these questions, but then when it comes to actually doing something with that response, it requires us to enter information into an Excel file, or it requires us to send an email or save something to Google Drive or OneDrive. We give those we give those tools to ChatGPT or these various agents or these various LLMs, and that's what makes it an agent. And so, as Jerry mentioned, in our case, our agents are helpful in really just cutting down the time it takes to get payment from their customers. That's really what it's built for. And I guess maybe the only other piece that I think might be interesting for the audience, when you think about, okay, well, what's different about a Daylit agent, or if I'm looking at different agents that there's a lot of noise in the space. How can I get comfortable with someone who how is this different from just me going into ChatGPT? The really important thing, and this is something that we spend a lot of time about, is context. And so, actually, I'm curious, Chris, Dan, is the term context related to AI? Is that something that is familiar, or you think we want to define for the audience?
Well, I think we definitely should, because it's take it to the basic action of prompting,
Right.
and its level of specificity in prompting, or then you go all the way into over prompting,
right?
Which is over coaching, and those types of things. So yes, I think the context that you're talking about helps give some framework around, okay, how this actually works. And so, yes, I think that would be great if you guys can shed a little light on that.
Yeah. And I think you're exactly right. When we think about providing context to our agents, we're really just trying to find the right way to coach them on basically what to do. Hey, if we're asking ChatGPT 1,000 times amongst hundreds of different workflows, how can we make sure that we're asking the right thing at the right time? And so part of that is experience. And so when you're thinking about, engaging with a tool that does some form of agency, these AI agents, you want to think about, have they been in the shoes? Do they have the right experience to be able to coach these agents in an effective way that's more than just a baseline, right? You can ask an AI agent, you can ask ChatGPT, hey, how should I go and collect this invoice? But in our case, we've collected hundreds of millions of dollars across tens of thousands of invoices over the last couple of years. So we kind of learned a thing or two, and so a baseline above just what these advanced models look at. And so one is experience, and the other piece, which I think is like the most important piece, is unique data sets. And that's when we think about like who is going to win in certain verticals. You think about what are the data sets that are going to be helpful that you can train or prompt or alert the agent to be able to make a smart decision. And so one of the things that we found in accounts receivable is that a lot of the data, or that important context that can help train the model on how to do the best job of collecting, it actually lives on a sticky note on the accounts receivable team's desk. We kind of jokingly refer to her as Sheila, because there's been like 3 customers who had someone in AR named Sheila, and Sheila is constantly calling or emailing or talking to her customers, And anytime there's an issue, she's writing it down on a sticky note. That's really hard to get that sticky note into an agent to try to teach them what to do. And so that's part of Daylit's secret sauce is we've found an ability to get that data from that sticky note into our system so that when the agent goes and taps on the customer and says, hey, Dan, Chris, from Bates Enterprises, we need you guys to pay, and here's how we're going to convince you to. We have all the important context. And so that's, I think, a really important piece when you're thinking about agents. You can't just rely on the baseline model. You have to really understand the context around it. And that's what makes an agent really work.
Yeah. And knowing, helping that agent understand what's useful and what's not.
Yes.
Like what to look at and what not to look at, and when to look at which pieces of it. Because if you're just I'm taking my whole, AR report from QuickBooks and dropping it into ChatGPT and asking questions, it's not going to do what you think. But, if you're using an agent that's structured for this problem, it will know how to think through it and reason through it, in a way that you're not going to get just out of throwing it into ChatGPT yourself. And the sticky note's really interesting too. I'm working on a sales a tool for commercial banking teams at community banks, and we have the same problem of, simplified example of like, hey, I need to follow up with this customer and write it on a sticky note, right? But how do you help remind them, or how do you let their manager know that something like that is happening? So, that context can kind of mean everything. And that's an interesting perspective of, it's not just what you tell it, it's kind of what you don't tell it, or all the ways to get information in. And that could involve a human having to put information in. Yeah.
Well, it's funny. It's like the old adage, like the best salesperson never put the stuff in the CRM because they could get away with it.
Yeah.
Right? It's like they had the Black Rolodex, and they had their notes there. And, if they're hitting their quota every quarter, they're not going to put it in. But the one at the bottom is put in. And so it's just, look, we're all human. The last thing that we want to do is enter something into a system that takes us away from our day job. And so that's really like the benefit of, Daylit system is we make it really easy for Sheila. And, we again refer to her as Sheila just because that's the first few customers, but we make it really easy for that context to get captured. And you can imagine just the power of having that context when you put the agents in charge. And Dan, it sounds probably like a similar situation for this, tool for the brokers, is if we can just know what's happening in the sales cycle, then we can go and coach our AI agent to do a more effective job of completing the task.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of promise in the AI tools themselves to help get that information from the proverbial sticky note into the tool in a way that wasn't, in the past it was, you're relying on, the person's, you got to incentivize the person to type the stuff in somewhere. But that's not quite true anymore. There's a lot of different, a lot of other ways that you can get it. So
totally. We talk a lot about, Jerry and I are constantly, and the whole team here, on our health journey, and just entering the food into the app to count the calories.
Yeah.
It doesn't work. And then, of course, this tool Cal AI comes out, and you take a picture of your meal, and you now have all of the data in there. Mm-hmm. And so just being able to actually enter that data faster is a huge benefit of AI, and it compounds because with that data, you can start to get smarter about your diets and your meal plan and that sort of thing. So I think it's super interesting.
Yeah. Well, I want to talk a little about why community banks should, encourage their customers to use this stuff. And the bigger picture of that, right? We touched on it earlier, is, I don't know, I think about this perspective of, this is the bank marketing show, right? All of our customers are kind of thinking about all of our listeners are thinking about how do you differentiate your community bank? Mm-hmm. We touched on a few minutes ago, it's the checking account with other stuff added to it. Right. So over time, you can kind of see the role of, the community bank marketer, the community bank CIO, tech person, product person. Part of your role is going to become putting together a suite of stuff. Like, you offer this core checking account, but, you could see a role of, there's going to be other AR tools. There's going to be other, CFO type of agents. We want to put together kind of our suite that works best for our customers. Mm-hmm. I think, the community banks definitely aren't gonna build a tool like this. So it's, the bigger banks are going to be faster adopting a lot of these things. And so it's going to become a new front of competition for community banks. So talk a little more about that. Like, talk about why it's important for banks to be aware of these tools and kind of what's in it for the bank to recommend them and to bring them into the product suite.
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think one way, like when we talk about like how AI agents solve our problems, kind of our workflow issue. I think one thing we did not mention is we have a software layer, right, which is the workflow automation, but we also have a core financing layer. This is around factoring. Customer can sell invoices in the event they do not want to deal with collection at all, right? So we have that component too. And that's the way kind of we dream or imagine the future of financial services is really kind of this notion that as in like, it's a solution. It's not a financial product someone wants to sell me, but rather a solution that solves my day-to-day problem. And my problem as a business is I just want revenue to be converted to cash, right? Because that's how end of the day I can book. That's the money I take home. So we really want to speed up that process. I think so should kind of community bank, or maybe as a way to think about how do you structure your product in a way that can really help, not as a financial product, but rather a solver for a problem. I think being in kind of the part of accounts receivable, it's really could be very beneficial to community bank, because end of the day, if you are focusing on the kind of deposit products, where's the deposit coming from, right? It's because my client pay me, I can deposit into my bank account. So if you kind of be in that workflow, help me collect things easier, and then end of the day, where do my deposit go? Well, into the checking account. So that's I think a way to really kind of reimagine your financial product and reimagine it in a way it's really a solution to a bigger problem.
I think that's all really smart. And I would just to sort of touch on one of the points that Jerry made, and again, like with Daylit, where these AI agents for accounts receivable with a financial product, in this way it's factoring. But I think the let's call it the headline is that community banks should really embrace AI tools as opposed to repel or discourage AI tools. And again, like I talk about Daylit as a software tool that has a financing product. If I'm a community bank and I'm dismissing or if I'm dismissing these AI tools, maybe right now where there's a lot of chaos and noise in the market, it can be a good strategy, and customers will be skeptical. But we talked about it earlier in the interview or earlier in the discussion. There will be a lot of these companies out there that think about the way that AI will change their service. And so what that means is businesses that weren't historically fintechs or weren't historically financial services will more and more start to bolt on or embed these other products. And so I think as a community bank, it's a really critical time to, maybe it doesn't mean releasing a product or even recommending a product, but embrace that like change will be happening. And it's a great time to start to educate yourself on all of the different financial tools, selling to the suite of the CFO that exists in the AI space. These are these new AI ERP tools like Campfire and Dual Entry and Rillet, Ramp and Brex. These are, big players in the AP space, Airwalks. And again, they're focused mostly on a credit card, but they have deposits. Of course, there's Daylit on the accounts receivable space.
I mean, that's an interesting point too. Just thinking about the flip of you could have a bank adding a tool like Daylit to the service, but you could have, have a tool like Ramp or Brex that says, well, we're going to be a bank. I mean, this is happening.
Yeah.
And as a small business customer, a small business owner, you're looking at the marketplace. You don't necessarily care. I mean, we say on the show all the time, like customers don't even know the difference between a bank and a credit union.
Yeah.
But,
Mhm.
so if you're looking at the market, you're starting up your business, you're looking for a solution. You may say, well, I don't care where my money is. I'm going to go here because they've got this cool agent that will help me with this problem I have. So as a community bank, you're trying to appeal to everybody. That gets back to, what we were saying a second ago of putting together that's kind of best in class suite of stuff that will help. If we also talk about the pure marketing problem here of really understanding the problems of your customers. So if you want to reach small business customers, the problems that they have in your market may be different than others. The small businesses in Manhattan are way different than small businesses in Peoria. And, you as a bank in that market understand that and can put together the right suite for them. But it's like that flip is something to really be aware of. You can't avoid it because, who you're competing with, you may think of it as we're competing against mega banks, we're competing against, Chime and these neobanks, but that's gonna get even muddier over the next few years.
No, I think it's exactly that. I mean, you look at DoorDash is I think the perfect example where a lot of these local restaurants would be the perfect prime customer for a community bank. And they've been established in the community for a while and they have great relationships. And here you have DoorDash that starts by offering a lending product. They're now looking to store value, meaning they're going to have a banking product. And before you know it, this is a real competitive threat to the local community bank. And so I think it's really to say that these AI tools, especially the ones that are selling to the suite of the CFO, you really want to embrace them and know what's happening because in the next 3, 5, 10 years, they can bolt on all these other financial products and it's a customer that you didn't even think about. And so it's a really great time to educate, partner as opposed to, because it's really hard to build them. So find a way to partner, start small.
Guys, I was at a national marketing AI conference in Denver just a few weeks ago, and one of the key messages with it as it relates to community banks is that this is a time of opportunity, I think, even for smaller banks to take the mindset that you're describing of what they can do as a value add for customers and potentially even move faster than the fintechs or the big banks that are trying to turn, this massive ship. And these smaller banks, by doing something like partnering with you guys, can go, hey, we can ramp this up very quickly. And all of a sudden, and communicate it to our marketing department that, hey, guys, we've got this great offering, that the banks even down the street don't have.
Right.
Because we brought in the right strategic partnership, to offer this. So, and you said, you were talking about timeframes, there, but I mean, I would suggest urgency. I guess I'm trying to say that somewhat guardedly, but to the bank leadership that's listening to this and going, those that are saying, okay, well, we're going to stand on the sideline and see what the other banks do, and then we'll kind of make our decision. Man, at the speed of which AI is moving, I mean, that's like going, hey, we're going to, it's like stepping back 20 years and going, hey, we're going to see how this internet thing goes for a while. And then we'll step into that. And it's like, you don't understand, doing this now. But I love the way that you guys describe what your tool does. It's kind of like, I'm not a mechanic, but if I had enough time and bandwidth, I could build a car if I had all the materials and everything else. But by the time I spend thousands of hours and untold thousands of dollars more than I would have just to go down to the dealership and finance the dang thing and drive off the lot, and go about the rest of my life. So what you're describing for, CIOs and CFOs and everything else is like, I mean, can you do some version of some of what you guys are describing in the AR category or even some of these other tools, Dan, that you mentioned? I mean, can a bank do that? Well, yeah, sure. But why don't you go do banking? Go do relationships. Relationships are what these community banks want, right? Yeah. So why don't you go do those and then, pull in a dynamic partnership like this and boom, you're off to the races like in a matter of months, not years.
Totally. Do the marketing side, paint the picture of, as a restaurant, so like using the DoorDash example, as a restaurant owner, you're better off having a relationship with a local community bank than DoorDash, who maybe can provide a checking account type of functionality, but doesn't care about you,
Right.
In the same way that community bank does. But that community bank needs to provide some of the other stuff, not food delivery, but some of the other stuff that DoorDash is providing in that in that setup. So that and that's that's kind of what we're talking about here. And this isn't a lot of stuff we talk about too. Is it's stuff that a bank has to invest in, but we're talking about partnerships here. Not you have to go buy Daylit for a huge sum of money. It's partnering and making it available to your customers.
Well, and the last thing, and I know I'll let Jerry in here, but the last thing I want to send this to know is where I think community banks can really benefit. And Chris, I agree that there's urgency. I gave 3, 5, 10 years, but you can easily justify that in months. Is historically when these banks were approached for partnerships, it was almost always a partnership that required them to take on additional risk. Hey, here's a relationship where we can go and I remember there was like the crypto and marijuana space or CBD space. Hey, this is a partnership where we have to go and take on higher risk deposits. Or, hey, here's how we can qualify lower income or lower credit quality borrowers, smaller businesses. This the future with AI and partnerships and banks, it's not requiring them to take on any additional risk, certainly financial or regulatory risk. And so I think there's an opportunity to make these partnerships happen a whole lot faster and kind of meet that urgency that the market requires. I think it's super interesting.
Totally. Yeah. On the urgency front, we also think, AI being a great tool to acquire a customer, because 3 years from now on, every single business will have some sort of intelligence tool for their AR, AP, etc. Right? It's just a matter of who. So for you just need to have this sense of urgency that you just need to be the first mover that really capture the clients, because 3 years later you come up with another AR tool. Well, I'm already married to my existing tool. I'm not going to do an easy switch. So like the window is small, I think, for community banks, for other partnership, and I think frankly for everyone, like the window, there's a small time window here, which is amazing, because this kind of new innovation just came out. People are still trying to figure it out. Still, there are giants standing on the sideline. But for the ones that really see the opportunity, really should understand it and then dive into it and use that as a great tool, both obviously provide valuable solution, but also use it as a marketing tool to acquire more clients, which is probably one of the most important items for banks.
Yeah. Well, cool. Yeah. I think that's a great kind of send off.
Yeah.
To just get people, I'm going to leave everybody with that. Think about the kind of the partnerships. Think about, right. It's a great way to, we talk a lot about brand positioning and stuff here, and it's a way to sort of expand your brand without having to make huge investments, without having to take on a lot of risk, and offer something, expand the offerings to your customers.
Totally.
Yeah, and I think the premise here is that what you guys have been talking about today should really get our listeners thinking, going, okay, this is part of growth mindset. Is how are we utilizing AI, and it's not what they're doing internally necessarily. It's everything around it, because AI is touching every facet of the intake and the output of all that we're doing in business. So kudos to you guys. Really, really cool stuff, and how your offerings are, providing great benefit and value.
Yeah, we appreciate
can't wait to see
it.
where it goes. Yeah.
No, thank you so much. I think kudos to you guys for sort of beating the drum to this part of the market where I think there's a lot of opportunity, and the community banks that we speak to, there's certainly excitement here, and maybe there's some mix of trepidation in with the excitement, but you guys seem to be really great champions for urgency in embracing this AI front. And look, Daylit certainly happy to be there to support where we can.
Yeah. Very cool.
appreciate you guys being on the show and sharing some of this stuff, sharing your perspective. Hopefully, we got people thinking here. We can't let you guys go without the lightning round questions. I know everybody's
some of the fun part
that.
here.
Yeah. But let's start. Let's go through them. Can you guys share a personal best, business best?
Personal best. I managed to stay in the cold plunge last week for a minute, which is
man.
Or business best. I think we just closed our big round around 110 million. So really kind of excited to build this tool and deliver it to our customer.
Yeah, that number is wild and bigger than some banks I've worked with. So I'm excited to see what you guys do with that down the line. So how about a favorite book or other resource?
Everyone has to read 0 to 1. Peter Thiel. You have to read it.
You have to.
Have you guys? It's probably somewhere on that bookshelf, Dan. If I had to guess,
I was going to. It's Chris? Not. I read it a long time ago, but it's not up there. But yeah,
okay. Yeah, it's a great one.
Great recommendation.
Yeah.
How about most impactful piece of advice you've received?
And Jerry and I are both. I would say eager students of the great kind of prolific entrepreneurs and. I think Steve Jobs always kind of rolls up to the top of that list. And this is one that I just love and, take it for what it is. But, Steve was always, team entrepreneur is always sharing, great insight. And one of my favorite things that he's ever said was, you look around the room and you look at these different devices or things that you use, and they were created by someone who's no smarter than you are. And it's just such a great reminder, we're big believers in persistence and, putting your head down and, obviously thinking smart, but getting things done. And I think that's just such a great reminder that, basically it's our way of saying it. Anyone can do it. And so you just have to kind of change your mindset a bit.
Yeah. I read that quote a long time ago. And before I got into my own business, it's always stuck with me. It's like, well, I just work for a big company and it's like, I want to do my own thing. Well, I don't know what I'm doing. Well, nobody else does. Right. Nobody else does when they start.
Right.
You just have to start. So,
yes. Of course, it helps when you're Steve Jobs and you probably have the highest IQ in the room. So but we take a liberty.
Well, flip that around. What's something you always tell your team or your clients?
So just as we were talking this morning, we're expanding the team a little bit. The two things we're looking for is curiosity and excellence. So I think we always, both host that as a standard for ourselves and also for our jokingly day leaders is always have an open, curious mind and always seeking excellence. Right, do your best. If there's something that worth you spending time, do it to the best.
Okay,
good one.
The last one's a softball, but what else do you want to tell people about Daylit? How can people get in touch with you?
Yep. So AI agents for accounts receivable, and we'll have the latest version of the product being released on December 2nd at 6 p.m. And for those community banks or audience members in the greater Boston area, we'll be hosting a live event at an art gallery on Newbury Street, right across the street from the office. And it should be a fun time. Chris, Dan, of course, would love to see you there if you're around. But for those that can't make it, it will be streamed online. And so that's 6 p.m. Eastern on Tuesday, December 2nd. We'll be releasing the latest version of the AI agents. Really, really cool stuff that the team has built. I, for one, am just pumped to be in the room to see it. And if ever anyone's around, we'll share maybe a link to the invite as a follow-up for this interview. But should be a lot of fun and would love to have everyone join.
Cool. Yeah. Well, send us that. We'll throw links in the show notes or reach out to us. And yeah, can people get in touch with you on LinkedIn or through the website? How do people follow you?
Yeah, follow us on LinkedIn, follow us on X. We have a YouTube channel as well, so we can share various ways. But Daylit.com is the website, and really appreciate Chris, Dan, you having us on the program, and it was a really fun discussion. It felt like we really got into it a little bit, so it was good.
Yeah, great stuff, guys.
Likewise, thanks for coming on. Great to have you, and I'm sure we'll meet up down the road.
Very good.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks for joining us. To go deeper or get access to some of the valuable nuggets from today's show, go to bankmarketingshow.com. There you'll find episodes, links to resources, and much more. Be sure to subscribe wherever you find your podcasts. And join us next time.